Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello and welcome to our audience. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you are listening in. It's great to have you. And today we have the joy of being in conversation with Matthew Newnham. We'll be diving into our superpowers, understanding how to be in better alignment with ourselves and with our work so that everybody can thrive and be the best version of themselves. So Matthew, thank you for joining us today.
It's such a pleasure, Andrea. You and Jon are such great, people to chat with on various levels. You know, your wisdom, your humanity, and dare I say it, personalities.
Oh, bless you. We're looking forward to the conversation. But as our audience knows, we need to give you your proper introduction. So, Jon, what's share the bio with us?
I'll try and do my best. I mean, we've had some fascinating conversations with Matthew over the last couple of months now.
Yep.
And you will see exactly why as this conversation develops here. But let me do the bio first. So Matthew Newnham is a seasoned business coach and consultant dedicated to helping purpose-driven entrepreneurs and professionals uncover and leverage their unique strengths. With over 25 years of experience in change management, he played a key role in launching several major UK retail banking ventures, earning a reputation for his expertise in customer propositions, experiences, and messaging. As the co-founder of Five Institute, he utilizes the 5 Energies framework from Chinese philosophy to help clients articulate their distinctive value propositions without resorting to hype or exaggeration. His approach ensures that businesses not only find their true alignment, but also achieve sustainable success. Beyond his professional endeavors, Matthew is a proud adopted Scot, and there's more to that story, having spent 25 years in Edinburgh before relocating to Spain in 2019. A lifelong film enthusiast and accomplished middle-distance runner, he's earned 3 Scottish Masters Track Championship age group medals in the 800 meters and 1500 meter events. So quite a guy. He also spent a couple of years flying fighter jets, even more of a guy.
The stories keep coming out.
Resilience and adaptability in business and life. As you can see, there is so much to this guy. We are so looking forward to this conversation.
Now, I want to start. That line on value propositions, authentic value propositions without hype and exaggeration just stood out to me because, as you know, you've been pushing me hard on what are you really saying, Andrea? What's really coming out? So much we want to unpack there. But before we get to what you do now and hear all the adventures of, flying fighter jets and so on, give us a little bit of the backstory. What is it what's the journey that you went on to get to the point of your passion now with alignment and helping unpack our superpowers?
That's a great question. And thank you for the introduction, by the way, guys. It's always so nice to hear words like that. And you go, oh, wow, is that me? Yeah.
That's you.
Who am I? Well, many people really. I'll fit a few of them into here. So, it's quite kind of meta, I suppose, to use today's lingo to ask, who am I really and why am I here? But those are kind of 2 of the most fundamental questions we can ask as human beings. And although they feel and sound philosophical, they are utterly practical as well. Because we relate to each other as human beings, socially and in families and so on, in terms of, well, who are you? And hopefully we care and we take interest and we relate because of these things that are interesting, right? Because we're all different and yet we have so much in common. So there's that. But of course, unless we're born with kind of a trust fund or what have you, we enter into the world of work. And even those who are wealthy, I've got a really good friend who was, brought up under a trust fund situation. She spent her life working. Right. So most of us find something we want to do, to contribute to prove that we've got some value to the world.
Yeah.
And in that guise, who are you and what do you bring is vital. And most people, when you meet them in networking situations or, a business angel kind of environment where people are pitching, the question will arise fairly quickly: who are you and what do you do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my observation, you get kind of three types of answers. One is the kind of practice elevator pitch thing, which sounds now, to me anyway, so last century. Right? Because it's highly scripted, it's formulaic, and you kind of think, wow, who are you when you're not saying it that way?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
And I'm not trying to throw shade at people. I'm just saying, we're all, most of us who came through kind of the corporate world or the small business world, and I've been in both, as you have as well. Most of us we've been through the kind of sheep dip training that tells us to do it this way, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel natural.
Correct.
And when it doesn't feel natural, it's just like it sounds the wrong note, or it certainly doesn't sound the one where you go, oh, wow, you've really got me. I'm really interested, right? So that's kind of response type number one. Number two is something that isn't scripted necessarily, but you think, wow, this is kind of vaporware. It's too much. It's kind of hyped up. And by the way, what does it even mean? Now, we don't hopefully encounter too many people like that. It's kind of bloviating hot air stuff. So let's move on to number three, where people of good conscience who genuinely are trying to figure this stuff out, they kind of stumble with the question. They may not even have anything to say for a moment or three because they're kind of not sure. And it's not like they've never tried before, by the way, right? So that's what I call the kind of most honest answer, the one where we don't know. And why don't we know? Well, because most of us, in fact, the vast majority of us, we're not really kind of shown what are our true gifts. What are you great at? What are you great at before you even think about it? And just kind of, you're naturally, and by the way, you started out being great at this stuff when you were a child, but you didn't realize it. And nobody told you, nobody encouraged you.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to kind of bash anyone or anything. It's just our system of growing up in the cultures that I know of anyway, and what we used to call the kind of the Western or developed world. It's kind of a weird thing to call it. Anyway, it is what it is. Really? Well, let's look at the ones that started 15,000 years ago, or whatever. Anyway, our tradition is not, by and large, to focus on what people are great at. What we really try to do is get people to fit in.
Yeah.
Right?
And do it our way.
That's it. And so, it's the round peg, square hole thing, or I don't know, square peg, round hole, whatever it is, it don't fit.
Exactly. Somebody says, if you think I'm around, what it is that he said, I'm trying to think of my uncle was quoted. He said, if you think
I'm a square peg in a round hole, find me a
square hole.
Square
hole,
I'd like to be a dodecahedron. Oh, God, we never have one of them. So, but the thing is, people are beautiful and wonderful and amazing if you just give them a chance to bloom.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in the world of business, we have to fit into what do we want to fit into? Do we fit into a machine or a team, a high-performing team? And as soon as you frame it that way, you think, well, there's no, surely it's no choice. Who doesn't want to fit into a high-performing team that feels great as well as does great work?
In whatever sphere, absolutely.
Yeah. And yet, I have yet to meet anybody who didn't go through the experience of trying to fit into, a machine of some type, social or work or both. And it doesn't feel great. It doesn't bring out the best in people. And it leads to all kinds of knock-on consequences, right? Including relationships outside of the work environment.
Yeah, indeed.
So that's a long-winded answer to your question of where did this come from? Is I kind of saw this early on, to some degree in school, but I loved school. It was the saving of me and so on, because life at home was not good. So I loved school, but then you start to get near to the work environment, and you think, it's not always easy to fit in here. It's not always easy to kind of get recognized for what you're really good at. And that only kind of gets exacerbated. Even if you get promoted and you get kind of better jobs and things, it's rarely the case in my observation that you get noticed for the things that are innately, naturally great about you, right?
Indeed. You
You
get
might get,
noticed for what you do rather than for who you
yeah,
are. Yeah.
these are what I call acquired skills,
Yeah.
right? So I used to have a friend that I commuted with between Edinburgh and Glasgow every morning on the train, who she was a partner in an accounting firm. So she'd become very good at that, but that was not her strength at all. Her real strength was she was a fantastic networker and fundraiser for charities, absolutely gifted at it. So she had acquired skills and, seniority and so on in what we call largely a metal energy profession, accounting, when she was really abundantly full of fire energy, which is about that kind of expansive people connection, networking, and relating to people, set of skills, innate skills that she had in abundance. It was immediately obvious when you start to know what to look for, you can see these things.
Yeah.
And there's an infinite way in which to apply them, right? So it's not to say that, oh, you're obviously one of those people or one of those people. We show up in so many ways. There's plenty of scope here. The pie is infinitely huge. The canvas is infinitely large. But if we don't know who we are and what we've got inside us, it's really, really hard to play in a way that feels and looks natural and shows up in a way that people go, wow, we got to have you in our team.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in there.
I'm intrigued. I'm just thinking, how do we understand who we are in terms of, what our superpowers are? You've spoken about fire energy. You mentioned the metal in there. What are some of these energies? I don't know how easy it is to go detailed into them here,
just
but
a quick
overview of them so people
summary
get where we're going with this.
Absolutely, John. Let me give you a little bit of context to this. Most of us have been through personality tests of one type or another.
Right.
And, I went through a whole range of them before getting into kind of military flight training. It was like twice a year we went through a medical, what they call a physical in North America. And somewhere in there, I'm sure we did kind of personality tests of one type or another. But most of those personality types, there's a few kind of fundamentals about them that really you don't know about until you speak to some experts in this field. And I've got a good friend who did a lot of study in this area. One of them is that the models were based around research that took place from kind of the 1920s through the kind of 70s in the main, right? So in one case, they were based on kind of, Minnesota farmers or whatever the thing was at the time. So somebody else did some other kind of slice of, some local population, because you have to be able to kind of work with a group of people and do that intensive study as you build up your, doctoral work or your postgraduate work, whatever it might be. But it's not representative of the kind of breadth of humanity. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is, what was the intended use? And in almost all the cases that I've ever encountered and discussed with other people, they're used to hire and fire people, to put it really bluntly, right? They almost never will be able to kind of find out what's really inherently kind of great about that person, because they then go on to do a second thing, which, your audience, I think, will recognize and say, you seem to have these kind of analytical skills. You should be an accountant, or you should be a whatever, a lawyer, a trial lawyer, what have you. Well, that actually is a bunch of hooey. and this is, it sounds so compelling, right? Here's the thing. Let's take an example. Within this framework, which I'll get to in just a moment here about the five energies, you can be any profession you like, but you approach it with your own kind of window on the world in a particular way. So when we explain to people how the five energies play out in real life, we take acting as an example. So we can name actors who each have a predominance of one of the five energy types. They're all really successful, but they show up in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So water energy is the one that comes from winter, which we're in currently, and that's about kind of the long-range perspective of resources and safety and sustainability. Just kind of put it in a nutshell there. But also can invoke a certain kind of dreaminess. So just remind me, the lead actress in Love Actually, Julia
Robertson.
Robert.
Thank you.
Roberts.
Thank you.
Julia Roberts. Yeah.
Yeah. So she has that kind of dreamy aspect, as you see in every role. She's a great actress.
Mhm.
That's how she kind of shows up. That's water energy. It's kind of musing. Oh wow, I can look back into the past and look into the future. It's almost this kind of dreaminess, but it can be very much about sustainability and meaning, long-term effects, right? Water is the only one of these five, by the way, that leaves a permanent mark upon the earth, hence the Grand Canyon. It ain't going away. Water made its mark on the earth, right? Wood energy is about spring. That's an entirely different thing. We go from that dreamy, pondering thing in the winter. I wonder how we did this year. And by the way, how do we think we might do in the coming year? We step into spring where
Let's make it happen.
Yeah. And by the way, I wanted it yesterday. I wanted it in, a million points of light across the sky. This big picture thinking, rapid, let's get going kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that kind of strong determination, let's drive forward. Mm-hmm. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a great example of that kind of wood energy. You can see that strong jaw. There's a strong jaw in water as well, but that pointed kind of go forward, like a wedge going forward, right? So he's an example of that wood energy that drives forward. That it's about the mission, it's the vision, and we're going, right? Mm-hmm. The cry from the heart, by the way, for wood energy is often, why can I not find a team that keeps up with me? And how come I keep going through a team turnover situation? Like, what part of this is simple do they not understand? Why can't they keep up? And
you don't have any wood energy, do you, John?
No.
Not recognizing any of this.
No, of course not. And I've lost track of the number of wood energy entrepreneurs in particular. I met them in the corporate world also, but I'll say, what's it like to be the smartest guy in the room and everybody else is struggling to keep up? Yeah. And what's it like to then get frustrated? Yeah. And then what happens? Well, I'll play games because I'm bored. What happens then? Oh, it gets a bit disruptive. And then what happens? Well, other people don't like it. Really? Tell me about that. That sort of thing, right? And the people who don't
defining characteristic of entrepreneurs being, wood energy, just get out there and go make it happen. Nobody else is doing this here. Let's go do this on our own.
If I can't find the team that will keep up, I'll go be my own team.
That's it. What's that old saying? You can go fast on your own, but you can go far together.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the kind of characteristics, if you like, that get lionized in kind of Dragon's Den in the UK. What's it in America? Shark Tank?
Shark Tank, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that kind of wood energy is the thing that gets held up as you should be like this to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, or a leader.
Yeah, but it ain't so, right? We can be entrepreneurs or great corporate leaders or public servants or anything, entertainers from any of these energy types, right? A cheetah knows that it's a cheetah. I don't know how. I don't know if it sits around every day and goes, wow, I am the fastest animal on the planet. This is amazing. I race you. Like, they just know, right? They just know that they're a cheetah. They don't have to think, oh, if only I was an ostrich. No, look at those stupid things. They walk weird, they run weird. And
I know.
Elephants, they know who they are. And they just do a great job of being an elephant. As humans, this messes us up. We don't even know who we are. We don't know what we're great at. We don't know how to do that thing. And then we get, cheetah envy. Oh, if only I could be a cheetah instead of an elephant. Life would be so much better, right? So, to be an animal, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of that, right? We, from the days when we lived in caves, we had to learn really quickly that, oh my God, that's a saber-tooth tiger. They're dangerous, or that's a whatever, friend, foe, etc. But we just recognize them as a species. But now we have pets, right? And we know that dogs have different personalities. It's not a
Yeah,
strange concept to us.
indeed.
And yet, if you talk to people in the business environment, personalities are, no, we want skills, we want people to train
Yeah,
them. Oh, really?
too woolly.
Yeah. You want to check the personalities at the door because that doesn't matter, doesn't have any value? Wrong.
Yeah.
You cannot say, leave, part of your body and half of your mind, and by the way, all of your soul at the door, because this is business, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not personal, it's only business. No, it's the whole person. You want the whole person to show up, not check out and just their shell. So anyway,
how you do the job is what the personality comes in.
And what's
And
great,
to the superpowers.
yeah,
How you get it done.
and what's great about the framework and the use of the language energy is that that's exactly what organizations want. How can you bring all of your energy to this and not have to dissipate so much energy or waste so much energy editing who you are or
Yeah.
hiding who you are or worrying about all the other stuff that you can't talk about in the workplace. So, energy has been wasted and dissipated in so many different directions. How can we appreciate and create the space for people to bring all of their energy in their unique energy form to be an effective part of creating this high performing team? So I love the language, and I'm sure we'll get onto this, but what came to mind is that since COVID, people and organizations have become far more alive to this idea of energy and the sense of engagement in an organization. Now we can be more human and more real because we know what really matters, having gone through this mass pandemic. Anyway, we've gone off track. So we've done
water
wood,
and wood.
water and wood.
I think
What's
that's
next?
beautifully on track, Andrea, because there have been two stories on the BBC, the British press over the last week, where first a decades-long kind of captain of industry, as they used to call them, wanted to be a colonel or a general. Anyway, captain of industry, right? He used to lead Spencers and Asda and so on and so forth. Has said basically that people who still want to work from home are lazy, right? And this morning, a story dropped in the BBC about a member of parliament who also apparently has businesses that he created in the past, and saying, yeah, we've got a problem in the UK where people just have lost the ability to work. They don't know how to work, and they're lazy, work shy, or whatever. Well, it goes back to that key word that you just mentioned, Andrea. It's about engagement, right? It starts when we're little children. There's a reason why children will not eat the broccoli or whatever it is they don't like. They're going to spit it out, right? So from a very young age, a couple of things happen. We can tell that children show up with different personalities, just like animals. Like our dogs, they all have personalities. We no longer say, oh, that's a dog. They're just like, we don't think that personalities ascribe to animals in the wild. Of course they will do, right? But we just don't know them well enough. Like, oh, it's a cheetah. Wow, that's the end of it. But dogs have personalities. Little children, from the moment they start crawling or whatever, they have personalities, don't they? So we take that as natural until we become adults in the workplace. Like, get rid of that personality stuff.
Yeah.
I know you've had it for all of your life, but that doesn't matter. And by the way, it doesn't even exist, but it does. And the other thing that happens is people only do what they want to unless temporarily forced by a compliance regime. So you say, well, I'm sorry, but you're going to eat the broccoli anyway. I don't think so. They spit it out on the floor. And then they laugh because it's really funny to watch that stuff hit the floor. So and most of us, we've been brought up in a compliance culture.
Yeah.
And there are times when compliance is a great thing, like, fire safety or whatever it might be. Or you really should go to school because, you want to learn things. Even though the school system could be better, not going to school, not a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's like having kind of, what in America is called guardrails. We want to have kind of boundaries around us, even though wood energy hates boundaries unless they impose them themselves. We want to have boundaries that channel our abilities and society to have a civil society.
Yeah, keep us safe.
Yeah. And even to provide some direction that's useful and, collaborative and so on. But if all we do is comply, we will flatten everything. and get down to the lowest common denominator, and that's never going to work. If we look at sport, nobody says we want the greatest. Wait, no, we want the lowest common denominator. No, we want the greatest whatever. Even if you have to accommodate a kind of strange and unusual star player, you try and do that because we're looking for the greatest performance. So we've got a compliance problem that's trained our personalities out of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of blunted us when we tried to express ourselves as children in terms of what we're great at.
Yeah.
So John, with your wood energy, I don't know, because we haven't talked about childhood stuff, but one of the things that wood energy is typically known for, it varies with each person, is out-of-the-box creative thinking. And particularly when it comes to solving problems, like, wow, where'd you come up with that one? Well, it just came to me. It's very obvious to me. Any of that kind of ring a bell from when you were a child?
Yeah. Well, I went on to be an engineer in terms of what I studied, because I like fixing things and making things and making things work. So
solving
problems,
problems,
absolutely, is always just part of my DNA.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have such a high amount of metal as well, those two play together, right? So if it was just one big spike of wood, then the tendency is to kind of come up with this kind of right brain, out of the box thinking that people don't even see it coming, right? And always about something that's new that hasn't been done before, right? Because when we plant seeds in the springtime, that's new life springing to fruition. Anyway,
well, you have to tell us about metal now.
Exactly.
Let me just quickly, as I'm going around the circle, let me talk about fire for a moment. I said that each actor, type would show up here. Robin Williams, undeniably one of the greatest comic and acting talents of his generation. Amazing, right? And that expansive ability to relate to people, huge amount of humor, and a chameleon-like ability to be whoever he thought people wanted him to be.
Yeah.
Anything from Mork to Mrs. Doubtfire and a million voices and characterizations in between, right? And including, by the way, because he was good pals with Sean Connery and Billy Connolly, and he did this hilarious routine about golf. He says, "It's a game where you hit this ball with a stick, and he just loved anything to go into these weird voices. He was flatmates with Christopher Reeve when they were at Juilliard.
Okay.
Robin lived on the floor above, and Christopher Reeve said he could always hear Robin like all hours of the night pacing back and forth, and these strange voices coming out of like it was him making up these voices, right?
Yeah, that's what he does.
Yep, exactly. And Mrs. Doubtfire, he goes for a job because conditions are you get a job and you show yourself as being responsible, then you get more access to see your children.
Your kids, we remember that one. Yeah.
And he goes to the job center, and this prim lady, of advanced years says, "So what do you do?" And he goes, "I do voices." And then in real life, I think he was just ad-libbing, like he did so many things, right? And it's hilarious. And she just looks at him. She's not amused. So it's really hard. If you're a fire energy person working in a very serious environment like the banking world, which I worked in for 25 years, there's not many places where you can play with that stuff and make it kind of add value. Right?
Yeah.
They just aren't. Anyway, the next one along, the fire, by the way, is summertime. Not surprisingly, right? So the ancient Chinese, this is going back to kind of 2500 BCE, they observed all of this by the cycles of nature. And largely speaking, it was about kind of planting crops and so on. And so from the springtime of that, all that kind of rush of profusion of energy comes summer when, they want to look after the crops. If you planted tons and tons of crops in the springtime, you need to kind of do some pruning during the summer so that the right ones thrive, right? And that ability to kind of see people and select them and place them in the right environment and look after them. And in that summertime, when there's still lots of energy going on, but we need to kind of bring it down a little bit and relate to them really, really well, is a fire energy trait that can work beautifully, right? I said earlier that one of the flaws with personality tests traditionally is they predict. And part of what they do is they'll say, well, John, you've got this metal energy going on, so obviously I know what you're going to do in certain situations. You're going to do X, Y, Z, and it's predictable. It's just that's the way it works. And I can tell what that's going to do as well. Honestly, I wouldn't presume to. Right? We got to find out with you. How do you show up in certain situations? Right? How dare I presume to know in advance and tell you and try and put you in the square hole, the round hole, whatever, because you're an individual, right? And we all are. And unfortunately, these personality tests have been largely used to kind of channel and plug people into slots instead of find out what's great about them and to unleash that. Right. So when I first came across this stuff later, I was kind of 5 years away from kind of leaving corporate life. I thought, more of this personality stuff, no thanks. Until I kind of was shown a different kind of framework where it wasn't that kind of, advanced predictability and shoehorning people and so on and so forth.
And I love that. I was going to say, I love that distinction, Matthew, because it really is a mindset shift on what we do with this information and finding a way to really celebrate the uniqueness, the superpower that people are bringing. And we lose our ability to do that when we're no longer dealing with children, we're dealing with adults. So we can marvel and be in awe at little children and the way they think and the things they come up with and the way they see the world and enjoy experiencing the world through them when they're young. And then when they're adults, we don't expect any of that anymore. We stop looking for awe and looking to discover who is this person and what is the greatness. We know there's greatness there and, really be on the lookout for it. So I love the way you're reframing the whole thing. But so we've done water, wood, fire. We have two more to go.
Now two more to go. So earth energy, as we move from summertime into late summer, this is when the crops are hanging heavy on the vine, right? So think of, say, tomatoes. We still want to let them come to the full ripeness. That's the point when if we jostle them too much, they're going to fall off before they're ready. So we want to really look after and nurture the crops, right?
Yeah.
That's why, growing up on a farm for my sins, which I really did not enjoy for the most part, there's certain things you don't do. Like you don't go crashing through a field of kind of vegetables or what have you, because you'll mess it up before the harvest time. Don't do that. Don't let the dog do it either.
Exactly. Yep.
So fall, as they say in North America, is about nurturing and making sure everybody's included in the kind of in the home, in the community, in the workplace. You bring everybody together. Are we all together in the nest and being looked after? Right. This isn't about herding cattle. This is about looking after. Huge difference. Community. Right. And I think one of the things that I saw happening after the great financial crisis, and again, kind of during COVID, was much more emphasis on we need to look after each other, don't we?
Yeah.
We really do, And so it's not just people, individual people, that have these five energies that we inhabit them, but the Chinese philosophy is that everything contains the five energies.
Okay.
So it's like Jackie Chan said in his version of Karate Kid, Kung Fu is life. Everything contains Kung Fu, and we are part of that cycle. And so, companies, businesses, brands, they all have a particular kind of blend of the five energies, which are really easy to spot once you start to pick up the fluency around this. Okay, so Nike, for example, just do it is a very wood energy.
Yeah.
Crack on and get it done kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're not really big, to be honest. People maybe used to aspire to it. I don't anymore because they've got scandals, around.
Who makes the shoes?
Well, their training group and also, yeah, some of their athletes being kind of found out for doping and so on and so forth, it really sours the taste, right?
Mhm.
And they're not doing so well these days compared to how high they were flying, say, a dozen years ago. But they have a kind of brand personality that is really easy to spot that way. But as I say, back to earth energy, about that inclusion, right? And if you're all about inclusion and nurturing, what also happens in autumn is time slows down. We're going to slow things down and make sure that we're really ready for heading into the autumn season. So I mentioned autumn and fall. This is late summer. Earth is late summer. Okay?
I was wondering how they managed to get 5 seasons in there.
Yeah. Well,
Someone gets yeah, exactly. As you say, 2.
So Chinese philosophy operates on much longer time scales than we're used to in the West. For about the first 1,500 years, there were only 4 energy types in the Chinese system. And that's where the idea of yin and yang, opposing things came about. But they realized actually that wasn't what they were seeing in nature. And by the way, that yin and yang, masculine, feminine energy was really used to control women, to be blunt. Right? My business partner, Nick, he's devoted his whole life to doing this stuff. He's been at it now for over 40 years. He's had over 50,000 one-on-one consultations with people, testing it, refining it, unpacking it all, because mostly this knowledge got lost through kind of wars and so on. And then what remained sat within traditional Chinese medicine, and it was largely wiped out during the Cultural Revolution. So even in China, there's not a great kind of simple framework that exists around this anymore. There'll be people you might encounter who say, "Oh, I know about the 5 energies." Not really in our experience, right? They might be talking about Chinese astrology, not the same thing, right? There's a linkage that years repeat each other every 60 years, but each year has an energy type associated with it and a particular animal. We've just started, Wednesday was the Chinese New Year, and it's the year of the wood snake.
Oh, the wood snake in particular.
Yeah, it's not just the snake, it's the wood snake. Last year was the wood dragon.
Okay.
So wood energy and the snake each bring their own characteristics to the year. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that it's only suitable for wood energy people. We all can respond if we know how to respond to each year, right? And the challenges and opportunities that it brings. So anyway, that's the earth energy kind of aspect. And obviously, Andrea, we can see with you both your fire and your earth energy and how those play out so beautifully in how you are and also what you do. In the same way that we can see with John, now we can step into metal energy.
What about my earth energy?
Yeah, what are
caring and loving and nurturing and what's going on?
And actually, before we move on, Matthew, I'd love to pick up on something you said in our chat before we started recording, which is, and we discovered this through COVID as well, quite often the way that we think about leadership, we think about them as wood energy, and we really dismiss earth energy in leadership in particular. Oh, it's too soft, nurturing isn't really getting the job done, it's just all that people's fluffy stuff. And yet we realized through COVID that the teams that really thrived were the ones that had leaders who cared, checked in on them, made sure they were okay, helped them deal with the things that were issues or problems that were blocking them from turning up fully present for the job. When they helped people look after the things they cared about, people gave them full loyalty, full engagement, full commitment. And I just wanted to make that point because we learned even in our language in talking about various personality styles that people with earth energy, we talk about in the other model that the audience would have heard us use when we talk about golden retrievers, you know, the kind of caring version of the animal personality that we talk about, that what they really do is they help us show real integrity in the way that we look after people. They hold us to account in the way that we care for people. You hold us to account in doing right by people. That's what the earth energy would do. So I just wanted to pull that out so that we really need to change our mental model of what a great leader looks like and catch up with the various energies and what people bring.
And if I could jump in there for just a second, just in my own defense, I guess, as somebody who, in the early days, I think possibly why I didn't have a whole lot of earth energy in me as I grew up. In my early days of banking, in the go back to the 80s, earth energy was not something that was valued in that environment at all. It was, show me the money or get out of my face was the environment there. People were dispensable. If you're not performing, you get out of here. We'll get somebody else who could work the hours and crack a boom, boom, boom. But actually what I learned when we first set up in business together and we started hiring people and growing a team, that approach just wasn't going to cut it. All you ended up with was high turnover.
Yeah, indeed.
You needed that earth energy to make people feel valued, make people feel included, make people feel like they wanted to stick around. So I had to learn some of that stuff and work hard to demonstrate those caring skills until it became more natural to me, because initially I just didn't value it. But absolutely, as Andrea's saying, that came back full circle again, and under COVID, when people realized, as a successful leader, people got to feel cared for. Now that tide seems to be changing a little bit now with the current environment, with what's coming out of the States, etc. But if you want people to stick around, you've got to show them that you care.
Anyway, I interrupted you, and I'm conscious that we're coming up to the hour. So
this is not an interruption. You've actually made a beautiful kind of opening here, because one of the things that happens with earth energy is time slows down, as I said, right? Earth energy people tend to take time and make time. Mm-hmm. What you've done by opening up this part of the conversation. Now, the greatest leadership example for earth energy is Nelson Mandela.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Right. Now, I sometimes exaggerate to illustrate. A strong wood energy leader coming out of 27 years of, imprisonment like that, would have approached things in a vastly different way. Because one of the things about wood energy is often, always, because I ask these questions all the time with people, can be a very strong kind of focus on justice and the rules, whether the rules are being followed or whatever, right? Mm. If Mandela had only focused on justice, you could easily have kind of seen and actually kind of agree with him, probably thinking, wow, you're right to be embittered. We're going to go after people who ran the apartheid system and so on and so forth. But an earth energy approach, which was natural to him, as well as he cultivated things consciously, right? We don't just kind of ride in the coattails of whatever energy type we have. And also, just to head off another but kind of thought, this is not imposed. This is not about imposing. I'm just me. I'm going to be whoever I want to be, and kind of just let that wash over everybody and good luck with that. No, we have to show up and be responsible with how we use and present ourselves, obviously, as you guys are so clear on.
Yeah.
So Mandela brought everybody together and to create the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and to bring in his fire and earth friend, Desmond Tutu, to run that, which was heartbreaking, literally heartbreaking for Desmond Tutu. Because fire feels the emotions in the room. Can you imagine sitting there day after day hearing these heartrending tales for anybody, but particularly with somebody with that much fire energy, whose natural impulse is to relate to people and make them feel joy and to laugh, and yet to be sitting through that? Wow. So that, bringing people together, making time, taking time to hear the stories, to nurture them as best they could, it was an amazing, amazing show of leadership from an earth energy perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it was absolutely by, miles, the best thing that could have been, best approach that could have been taken.
Indeed.
Obviously, one can take different approaches, but I think in this case, really, it was amazing.
Situation, absolutely.
Right? And so, whereas, somebody like Churchill during the Second World War is an entirely different kind of leader. Principally, water, he's talking about destiny, and wood, about direction. And he was the right person for that environment and that situation, and how he particularly did that And he kept his language very, very simple, but it was powerful and it was moving.
Mm.
You think about the power that sits in a big reservoir. If you open up the sluice gates in the dam, a lot of power comes through, right? And it can choose its timing on when to do that. It doesn't have to kind of go blasting in there as wind energy can do, sometimes to great effect, by the way. We need to mobilize right now.
Mm.
But that unleashing of that innate authority and power with destiny and history on your side, which is what Churchill invoked, wow. So when people show up with their natural gifts, and you have to know, is this the right environment for me? Is this the natural game for me?
Mm.
Am I the right person? It's very flattering to be offered jobs and promotions and so on, but it takes a big person to think, wait a second, am I really is that the best?
Yeah.
Am I the best person for that?
Yeah.
Really, truly? And maybe if I was opening my eyes and heart here, I would see that there are other talents in the room.
Mm.
Many years ago, I worked for a few months for American Express down on the South Coast in Brighton. And I got chatting to a guy after hours one night who was a Kiwi there, just, working in Europe for a few years to travel around. And he was a filmmaker in his spare time. And I walked out during coffee break the next day. I thought, wow, and being a lifelong film fanatic, of course I'm going to find it interesting. But I thought, how many other stories are locked up in that building that we'll never hear?
Mm.
How many other talents are in that building we'll never know about? And honestly, the whole place was a confusing kind of puzzle because I had chatted with other kind of colleagues and nobody could figure out how the place worked, even though American Express was hugely successful. So we basically were running kind of in second gear in a very clunky way in most businesses. And second gear might actually be high praise for some. Right. And I know, like, if you try kind of running or doing any kind of physical activity when you're either injured or tired or stressed or ill, it's hard work just to kind of get to a baseline level of something. And so a lot of, good people are trying their best, but it's just way too much work for the results they're getting. Right. And that holds true in most corporates that I've ever seen. I walk in the door and I can tell almost immediately, you just feel the energies, and people are kind of going through. Yeah. But it's not like the entrepreneurial world is all kind of rosy either. Right?
No.
There's plenty of problems to be solved, and they don't always mesh the gears particularly well, but they kind of crack on, and almost through brute force and sheer willpower, we're going to get through this anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I've been in both camps, kind of, up to my neck in it, and I know, and I know you guys know as well. So, but when you find something, wow, they're great at that, and when it's used in this way in these situations with these people, it's a thing of beauty. That's what we should be aiming towards, and that's not a panacea. It's not utopia. It's entirely doable, but we have to be conscious and put that in there as a priority. It's still about performance, but it's a way better model, right?
Yeah.
Let's not forget metal energy, by the way.
I was going to say, I'm conscious we've got maybe 2 minutes now.
Okay.
I think, Matthew,
just kept you waiting the whole.
We're going to have to bring you back and have a different conversation. There's so many more avenues we want to explore, but I think we need to at least get the metal energy in there for our audience. Let's just close that loop here on the 5.
So metal is autumn time, harvest time, right? And the ancient Chinese would consciously pick people with a lot of metal energy to direct the harvest. Why? Because metal is about efficiency. It's about value and harvesting that value, and it's about monitoring and measuring what's going on. That's exactly the kind of person you want running the harvest. Someone get in here quickly with the best tools, most efficient way possible, and make sure we don't waste and lose anything. Get it in those silos or whatever it was that they used in ancient China, right? And so it was a great kind of insight. And now, metal, like all of the 5 energies, has a kind of perpetual what we call big question. And it's like your GPS, even if you're not aware of it running in the background. And that question is kind of 2 parts. It's what's missing or incomplete? Great question to ask if you're in the harvest, because we don't want to leave stuff out in the field that we could have gathered up. Not always a great question to ask if the first thing you come home from, busy day at work and you're tired and you're stressed and you walk in, you say, why isn't that over there? And by the way, look at that mess. And who didn't do the job over there?
Yeah.
And everybody else is going, well, we just thought we were having a nice earth energy family time here. And thanks a lot for that bracing cold slap in the face.
Yeah.
And this is true for any of the five energies, right? So fire energy, we love humor, right, Andrea?
Indeed.
And
But I've had to learn to contain that.
Has it ever been a time, perhaps, when you might have used your humor inappropriately or too much at the wrong time or overshared? That, like I have, right? And most of us, we have. And so every energy type has its greatness and places where we can stuff up, right? So usually our greatest gifts, the flip side, is our greatest challenges. And it might be that we don't see them too often because they are really magnified when we're tired, ill, or stressed. So if things are working well, you're thinking, well, I don't know what you're talking about, all this kind of, flip side stuff, because honestly, the game's going great. Okay, you might have everything together today, but how do you know how well you're set up for the coming year? Because it's going to have a lot of disruption and challenges. That's a freebie, Wood energy, fast moving and disruptive. What a surprise. 2025 has already started that way. Snakes, lots of twists and turns. That's what you can expect for this year. Now, that will bring opportunities as well as challenges, but let's just focus for a moment on the challenges. If you've got a business environment that's highly disruptive and unpredictable, what does that mean, whether you're in the corporate sector or in the entrepreneurial sector or the freelancing sector? It doesn't mean we can just kick back and put it on autopilot, right?
You have to be totally full on.
Or at least totally aware and focused. Because the full on thing, even that loaded language, because every piece of language comes with its own baggage, right?
Yeah.
Full on is much more of a wood energy, pedal to the metal, as they say.
Yeah.
Or is it metal? Is that the way it is? Yeah. Full afterburners, like,
right.
flying fast jets. And that works until it doesn't, as you said earlier on, John. And fire energy will happily follow along because fire is very responsive. Right? I love it. And yet, fire can literally burn out. And I've met a lot of fire energy people who burn out. Right?
Indeed.
Wood takes longer because what happens to a tree? It flexes until it breaks.
Yeah.
Or it slams into somebody and they get hurt as well, right? So everything can show up in different ways. Metal, very, 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 very tough until we got mental fatigue. Right?
Wow.
You see what I mean?
And you're right. And for the year, I guess full on, what I actually meant was switched on. Really alert to what's going on because it will change so dramatically.
Yeah.
I think what you said is absolutely right. We're going to have to do a part 2 to this, Matthew, because sadly we need to wrap this one up. But there we have the 5 energies and a much better mental approach to what we do with it, how we become more curious about the awe and be inspired by the greatness that people are bringing and really work to create a space for them to flourish, bring the energy that they have, their particular style to work, their superpower, so that everybody performs better together and win.
Here.
But I'd love to delve into more of the actual experiences you had in organizations and how life changed, the experience changed, the performance changed when we made space for the real energies that people had and what it delivered. But that's a whole other conversation.
So if you're up, Matthew, we'd love to have you back to do another session with that.
Be delighted, guys. Thanks very much. As a teaser, the great financial crisis was largely driven by dysfunctional metal and wood energy.
Oh, wow. That's a cliffhanger right there. Don't say anymore. That's the point that we're going to pick up on in the next conversation, and we need to book that one soon. Part
How does
two
that,
coming
how does
coming
that turn
in.
up? Is it there, and how does that turn up in other situations?
Oh, that's what we want to talk about. The
Yeah.
various events that people will be aware of, and helping them see the energy that either made it great or made it really, spectacularly bad.
So huge thanks to you for being with us today, and we look forward to the B-side.
Yeah, but now part two. It's going to be a real
It's gonna
full-on
be a
one.
whole one of the total.
Sometimes the hits are on the B side anyway.
Exactly. There you go. There you go.
Indeed.
But to our audience around the world, thanks for being with us again. And I'm sure you're going to be looking forward to part two as much as we are. But for now, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
And
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.